We've now arrived at the end of another arc on this project, so the time has come to do another cleanup pass. I'm just going through things I have in my notebook that I wanted to come back to and see if I can easily clean them up now or if I need to keep them around for cleanup later. I'm also taking a look at all of the to-dos in the code because at this point I don't know that I can actually remember to write everything down and remember all the things that I thought I would remember in the moment, but usually I have to-dos in the critical places. So I'm just going to take a quick look and see if there are any to-dos where I can actually fix them up in the code right now. And then I'm taking out all of that scaffolding and testing code, the temporary stuff that was just there to help us build this thing up, and getting it all cleaned up and ready to go for the next step. In this module, I built out the layer for abstracting operating system specific features. Specifically, it has a wrapper for the low-level memory allocators in an operating system. On top of that, we set up a scratch pool system, which is powered by a thread context passed through thread local storage. That scratch pool will be a key part of the style of this entire code base and has already made a lot of impact on how easily we can handle some of the features just in this layer. I also added things to this layer to help with handling files, so we can do things like reading and writing files, enumerating the files in a particular directory, and getting important paths to things relevant to various attributes of our program. We added in new types to our base layer and implemented functions in the operating system layer that allow us to have a basic vocabulary for talking about time in terms of date time and also in terms of precision time. And I added other miscellaneous helpers during this first pass, things like the library loading, getting entropy, and getting the command line arguments. This is very far from everything we might ever want, but it's a bunch of stuff that hits a good ratio of what is easy for me to do immediately in this code base and things that we'll actually be able to use in the short run. We'll probably revisit and do a whole nother section on just graphics alone, and there are plenty of other things we haven't done we might want to touch someday. While most of this stuff is something that I've done before and I'm familiar with, I did throw in a couple of new experiments that I want to make sure I keep my eye on. If later on in the code base's lifetime I'm thinking that some of these are causing more issues than they're worth, I'll be able to learn from that and avoid making this mistake in the future. First, there's this unusual idea of initializing the operating system layer in different ways for different entry points. So our users will be able to use any entry point they want so long as we've implemented an init for it. I don't know if this is going to be better or worse. It definitely has a potential downside in that now users will have to have different entry points for different backend targets. It's an aspect of their build we haven't abstracted. On the other hand, they won't have to use an unusual entry point that we gave them rather than just a normal one that they're used to, and I'm not sure which I prefer, so we're going to see how that goes. Second, and this is kind of a small one, but it might still end up being something we can notice either working well or poorly in the future, I decided to use null-terminated strings in one little piece of the API, even though everywhere else I'm using a length-based string from the base layer. For getting a procedure from a library that we've loaded, I decided to use a null-terminated string because it seemed like a unique opportunity where all the things that make it valuable to not use null-terminated strings, besides the fact that it's consistent to do everything the same way, were in favor of doing it. So, there were a lot of pros to make this in theory, but we'll still need to keep our eye on it. It might just not be worth it. We'll see. So far in this project, I've been doing a lot of stuff that's just getting basics set up. And for the most part, it's doing things that I am fairly familiar with that I've done in other places before. So there hasn't been a lot of room for experimentation and learning as I've been going. But I want to change that. I want the next part we go to be some time spent writing code that's either designing a new system that I've never done anything quite like it before, or learning about something that I haven't learned about before, even if it's something simple on either of those cases. I think it'd be good to just have a module or two where I'm in a totally different mode from what these first two modules were in. So I am looking forward to trying out a different approach on the next module.